Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome to the weekly live stream where we talk about hiring, job search, employment, all that kind of stuff. Social skills, resumes, job interview questions, all that kind of stuff, all wrapped up together. And also two things: the psychological aspect of getting hired and going through job search, and also the reality of getting hired and going through job search. Not just the theory of how it should work, but the real world aspects of how this stuff actually goes. Dealing with unprofessionalism, rudeness, and all the other kind of stuff that incompetence that comes along with it. So thank you for joining me today. There was a little bit of a last minute change of plans. I was going to do a collaboration today, but that's probably going to be rescheduled. So I'm here alone just for today. I see there are 10 people here already. Thank you for joining me. This is an interactive live stream, so get in the chat. If you should see my face, that means you should see a chat box somewhere nearby if you're watching this on your phone or a tablet or some other device. If you're watching this on your 85-inch big screen TV, get in the chat and tell me about the woes of your job search campaign. That's what we're going for here, I guess. The title of today's episode is called Getting Hired is Hard. This is episode number 23. So if you are experiencing some challenges, like I've said before, this time of year, the sort of holiday season, it tends to, I think, amplify how everybody's feeling. So if you're in a good place, it tends to amplify that. If you're in not so good of a place, it tends to amplify that too, and that can be not so great. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. So if you are experiencing some challenges right now, hopefully 2025 will be a good year. Hopefully there'll be a good year for everybody. I've got a good vibe about 2025. So for what that's worth, hopefully you guys all feel the effects of that also. But I know that for people that are between jobs right now, it can be pretty challenging. It can be pretty rough. So if that's you, kick this off. Get in the chat. I do not have much of an agenda to talk about. I'm here simply to respond to your questions and comments. Tell me what you're wondering, what you're struggling with. Let me know what's up with you, and I'll see if I can help you out. Yeah, so just to kick us off, I'm going to talk about some of the aspects of this. Getting hired is hard. It's interesting because, as we've commented before several times, the skills required to actually get a job are quite a bit different, unintuitively, than the skills you need to actually do a job. And that can be a shock to a lot of people. You might be really qualified in doing some pretty amazing stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you know exactly what to do to get a job, and that the process is easy and quick. A lot of people discover this the hard way. It's kind of a slap in the face where you're qualified. Either you're coming out of school or you're coming out of an existing job, and you might have been on your A game. You might have been crushing it. You're highly qualified. You add a lot of value to your employer, or you know how to do a lot of different things. But then you find, getting a job is not as easy as simply telling people that you're qualified, right? You get all kinds of things that you weren't anticipating. Sometimes it seems like they don't believe you, or sometimes it seems like it's not enough. They're wanting something else, and you're not quite sure what that is or how to provide it. So, if you've been in that situation, let me know how that's turned out for you. This is what we find. I'm a technical introvert. I have been my entire life. I've worked with many technical introverts, and this is a common theme for if you are a introverted type person, or you have a penchant, shall we say, towards being more technically minded person, as opposed to a people-minded person. You're more of a people person. If you're a technical person, you may have challenges with this process because especially the official hiring process for a lot of larger employers, the process really is tuned in to having people skills. which can be a bit of a shock to a lot of technical people. People skills are important, and a lot of technical people have a blind spot for just how important these are. The good news, however, is that they're really not that big of a deal to learn. It really isn't. I mean, if you can do a lot of the highly complex technical work that you do, let me tell you, some of these social skills, in my experience, they haven't been anywhere near as challenging or as involved as some of the technical skills that we've had to learn. So that's the good news. The bad news is that if you've never been tuned into this stuff before, this is your real life lesson here by being thrown into the deep end, and you have to sink or swim. And, once you learn that the job search process, at least as practiced by a lot of larger employers, is very much tuned into social skills and people skills, then hopefully it starts to make a lot more sense. So if you're tuned into this, you might be crushing it. If you're not yet tuned into this, you might be having some difficulties, but they're really not that hard to overcome. So if this strikes a chord with you, get in the chat and let me know. I'm just sort of talking off the top of my head, hoping that somebody will come in with a story or a comment that will kick off a discussion here where we can get into it. I see there are 13 people here. Thank you for joining me, especially at this time of the year. This is not a time of the year where people are really tuned into self-improvement. Usually they're off partying or indulging in whatever it is that they do that, is kind of personal to them, shall we say. So, if you're here, get in the chat. Now, I have created for myself a bit of a document here that was meant to be a sort of thing to talk about when nobody's giving me anything to talk about. Get in the chat. Let me know what's up with you. And until people start getting in the chat, I'm just going to be rambling off the top of my head. I don't know how entertaining that is or how educational it is, but okay. I had put together a couple of things of just stuff that I could talk about when there was nothing to talk about, and this is a good one, talking about in history how unconventional people who have character and don't follow conventions can be the greatest workers. This is what I found, and this has been a belief of mine. And I have seen this in real life. I've seen people that are a bit outside of the mold can be some great workers. They can bring something unique to the work they do. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this is something that, in my opinion, from my perspective, seems to be a bit alien when it comes to the hiring practices of today. We were just talking about how a lot of hiring practices tend to be, in my opinion, they put too much emphasis on people skills, including for technical roles. Like if you're hiring someone to fill an engineer position or an accounting position, where technical skills really matter, even in roles like that, the way that they are filled and the way that the recruitment and selection process works in HR departments, it seems to really emphasize soft skills and social skills and things that really aren't central to the role. I don't care what anybody says. Obviously, they do matter. They are important. And a lot of introverted and technical type people need to tune into these more than they do. But they are really not the central core of what these jobs are. And so it can be a very confusing experience for a lot of job seekers because they're fully qualified and they've got these technical qualifications that are really nothing to shake a stick at. They're pretty involved. But yet, the initial screening process certainly tends to look at things like how likable you are, how good your communication skills are, how well you follow protocol and etiquette, things like this. And they can easily get you eliminated in the first screening round if you don't have strengths in these areas. And that's a real missed opportunity. So I see it as a bit of like my mission to sort of help people clue into this and, being more aware of it, what they can do to get further in these official hiring processes. Amazed is here. Thank you for Amazed. You win the medal for being the first person in the chat today. So congratulations. Amazed says, hi, Bill. Up to how much time do you think would be reasonable to ask a recruiter to renew and respond to a job offer? Or review and respond to a job offer? Well, listen, the way this usually goes is that you shouldn't have to really be on their back about getting back to you for an offer, because if they are serious about the offer, they're the ones that are wanting you to get back. They're placing the urgency on you to respond quickly, right? Now, usually the way this stuff goes for most worker level jobs, it's like a couple of days, you know. I'd say up to 3 days maximum for normal, for the normal process. Like if somebody's going on vacation or there's some kind of mitigating circumstance, then it could go longer. But usually, once people have sent out an offer, they're wanting you to respond pretty quick, within for sure 3 days. Okay, I think the expectation for a lot of people would be 24 hours for most worker level jobs. That's kind of the expectation. So if you receive the job offer on Tuesday, they're hoping that you will get back to them by the end of Wednesday with a yes or a no, or if it's a yes, with the signed employment letter, right? So you shouldn't have to be like pestering them and saying, hey, I've sent in my offer, like, have you accepted it? Right? So now, if you're talking about like if you haven't got an offer yet, but you've maybe done the round of interviews that you think is the last round of interviews, and then they're going to be making a decision, and you're contacting them to get a decision, are you sending me an offer? That's a bit different, okay? I don't think there's any reasonable amount of time. What we're seeing these days is the culture is quickly becoming one of ghosting. So if they're not usually going to get back to you with a no, they're just not going to get back to you at all, right? That's what we're seeing. It's unfortunate that is the way the world has been evolving the last like 20 years, but that seems to be the way it goes. So that's what I would say about that. You shouldn't have to chase anyone down for an offer. If they're interested, they're chasing you. If they're not getting back to you, that signals that they are not interested. Okay, it could mean anything, and I'd say 80% of the time, that's what it means. It means we haven't got back to you because we're not interested. Okay, so it's a no. I hate to say it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is kind of the way the protocol seems to be working these days. 20 years ago plus, they would actually get back to you more with a no and say, I'm sorry, we've decided to move on or something. But these days, they just don't bother. That's becoming standard. It's unfortunate because it's not good etiquette. But does that make sense? Amazed? Right? Now, listen, I've for some reason, I've been talking about this a lot lately, but I had an experience many, many years ago, and I turned it into a video where I talked about it, where I got hired by a company. This is like when I was getting jobs. I got hired by a company, but it was the most ridiculous, lengthy process like you could ever imagine. I did 9 interviews to get this job, 9. And they ghosted me at one point, maybe more than one point, but I remember they ghosted me at least once. And I had to call the company and say, like, what's going on? Are we moving forward? And they said, oh, it's good that you called us because it turns out the recruiter you were dealing with just left the company. So we're happy that you called because yes, we will be picking up the process with you with somebody else. So in that case, it was good that I called back, but that's a wild exception to the rule, I believe. That's not a typical thing. So, yeah. Like, once again, if this is a good job, like your dream job, and you're really, really interested, and you're really hoping it's going to work out, I would follow up. Like, I would leave no stone unturned. But if this is just like a job, you've applied to a whole bunch, you've taken a lot of interviews for various things, you're not particularly passionate about this job. If you didn't call back, I don't think you're missing much. When they don't call you, that is kind of the signal. You know what I mean? If they are interested, they would be on your back. They'd be on your case about it. Mary Wells is here. Mary says, why do you have to go through 3 or 4 interviews now? Back in the day, you had 1 interview, that's all. Incorrect. For some things, yes, I will agree. But 40 years ago, you had jobs that easily required 4 interviews. The higher you go, the more checks and balances they're going to put on you. Because when you get to a certain level, you're making decisions. And in order to make decisions, they have to trust you. And as you can imagine, it's not easy to trust strangers. This is the flaw with this system. It's also why people tend to hire people they know for stuff that's higher up. Because, okay, at least at the end of the day, you're a known quantity. I've worked with you before. I know you. I know that you have these biases and, you do this very well. Maybe not so strong in this area, but that's okay. Because at least I understand what I'm getting. It's better that than taking a chance on essentially a total stranger who I don't know. I've never actually worked with you before. I don't know what I'm getting, Oh, sure, people tell me that you're good, but, you can't always hang your hat on that, right? Now, the other thing, okay, that might be a factor here across the board is that HR has evolved in a really weird way, okay? Just bear with me a second. HR, ever since the 1970s, has been very, very schizophrenic, okay? In one sense, they regard people as numbers, okay? Human resources. You are a resource just as much as inventory is a resource, okay? Or manufacturing inputs like raw materials are a resource. Right? So it's a very impersonal process. Employees, they treat them just the same as any other input to the business. They treat you like cattle and they don't care about you. We can see that when they lay people off right before Christmas or, play all these kind of games where they don't treat people properly. We can see that every day. However, the other thing that HR does is it also treats people like people, where they've been tuned into all this flavor of the month psychological stuff where they deal with leadership and influencing and motivations and incentives and all this. And they pretend to care about everybody's mood and psychological health and all this kind of stuff, right? So which is it? Are you a number or are you a real person with feelings, right? All this emphasis on harassment and, this kind of stuff, like where they're tuned into all these sort of very, very humanistic kind of things, but yet they also treat you like a number. And we see this when they keep yo-yoing back and forth. Sometimes they'll actually treat you like a person or pretend to. And then the next moment they're treating you like a number, giving you these letters that have been written by lawyers, in legalese to tell you something very simple and basic they should have just done face to face, right? Right? So it's been evolving in a very weird way. And recently, the other thing that's happened, I'd say in the last 10 years, is that HR has lost a lot of its confidence in being able to assess candidates correctly, right? So being able to pick good candidates. HR was always very bad at this. In all fairness to them, it's a very tough challenge to spot talent. Almost practically nobody can do it in any industry. So it's a very tough challenge. But HR has shown themselves in business, in a corporate environment, to be exceptionally bad at this. This is manifested in terms of looking at the stats on how long employees stay with companies, right? It's been going down and down and down and down every year since about 1985 or something. Like I don't have the data on it, but it's something like that. They've been going down, right? People are not wanting to stick around. Companies have been unsuccessful at attracting good people and retaining them. We're getting worse at this all the time. And so as a result, they've admitted, kind of internally to themselves, the profession has admitted that they're not good at this. And so what you see, especially in a lot of larger organizations, is that the job interview process, they're getting more and more people involved in it, right? You're getting more and more decision makers. So it's almost like a decision by committee kind of operation to select a new hire, right? And the reason that they're doing that is because nobody really wants to take responsibility if the employee doesn't work out, right? So they're looking for a way to be able to pick someone so that they can say they've picked someone, but yet they can't be blamed if it turns out that that person doesn't work out. So one way to do that is to have a lot of people involved in the decision so you can say, hey, I just went with the recommendation of the group. You can't blame me, right? I presented the candidate to you, yes, but then you guys all approved the decision, so you can't turn around and blame me if this person doesn't work out because you approved them, right? We're seeing more of that. So that means more consultants. That means companies hiring outside HR companies to contract out some of the recruitment stuff and even some of the selections, some of the initial screenings, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and that's one reason why maybe in some circles there's more interviews. The thing countering it, though, is that, you see, they've been tuned into the efficiency of the hiring process. And when you have lots of people sit in lots of job interviews, that's very inefficient. There's a lot of, like, if you figure out how much you're paying those people per hour and how many of them are sitting in how many interviews, that's like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, like just to hire like one person, maybe at the worker level, right? And combined with the fact that they're not very good at selecting the most appropriate person, their efficiency really doesn't look very good. So that's the force that's pushing against having more and more interviews. Mary says, and they ask you the same question. I know, I agree. I agree with you. And it's ridiculous. It's also stupid. And a lot of those questions, they're not very good, And especially considering, like, look at my YouTube channel. Look at all the other YouTube channels. Look at all the resources you have online saying, this is how you answer that question, right? Like, even with that, do you really think you're going to get a good appraisal of the person? It's going to be even worse, So you would think they would change the questions if for no other reason than to get away from the canned, crafted answers that people are showing up with. But no, apparently that's not something they're thinking about. And based on like not to beat up on recruiters, because there are some good ones out there, but a lot of them, they don't seem to see this problem. They think that these questions are good, that they are great determinants of, the person, and they show great insights into the person you're speaking with. I mean, I just laugh at that, but whatever. Mary Wells says, just for a customer service job. Yeah, exactly. Like 50s, 60s, 70s, you got people that did a pretty damn good job across the board in the jobs that are the same as they are today, like customer service. Completely different hiring practices. Have they made those jobs better? No, they haven't. Amaze says, I personally think a professional role should require more than one interview. However, meeting with all interviewers in one day may be a good idea. Yeah, I mean, listen, no two companies or no two organizations have the same hiring process. Everybody's got their own opinion on how to do this, and all of them suck because, here's a fact that I'll put before you. When they hire executives who are like decision makers, it's very important you get the right person, because if you don't, they're going to flush your entire business unit down the drain. Like, they could get thousands of people laid off because they made such bad decisions that this thing that you've built up over many years, you put them in charge of it, they destroy the entire thing in like 2 months. You better get the right person in there. Spare no expense. So consequently, the way they hire executives is different from how they hire workers. They do a much better job of getting to know that person before they select them. And it's usually a much more unstructured process It's about having long meetings with them, long conversations, unstructured conversations. That's how, in my experience, that's how that stuff is always gone. You really get to know who they are, what they stand for, what their style is, what their opinions are, what their biases are, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. You really get to know them. The problem is that you can't do that with every worker that you hire. It's just prohibitively labor intense. So you have to sort of use shortcuts with people at the worker level or the professional level. And that's where these stupid job interview questions come in. They think that we don't have time to get to know this person really. So we're going to try and get to know them without actually putting the time in to get to know them. So we're going to ask these strategic questions and we'll get a good enough, picture of them to make an educated guess. That's their whole attitude. You don't really know if you got a winner or a dud until maybe they've been on the job for 6 months or something, a lot of companies do that. They have like a probationary period because you really can't tell. Not when you just talk to the person for like half an hour or even an hour. You still don't know them. It's going to take a lot longer than that to get to know them. And it's prohibitively expensive to do that. Right? And I mean, as Mary Wells said earlier, just for a customer service job, do you really got to do that? Really? It's like, no, it's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to. But the problem is that they employ a lot of psychology, thinking that, when I ask this strategic question, this demonstrates this thing, I'm probing for ambition to be in this role, and it's so flimsy, it really is. And I can say this because I've taught this stuff at university. I know some of the theory behind it. What I've seen doesn't seem to have a whole hell of a lot of peer-reviewed evidence backing it up. It's just almost tradition backing it up, But hey, these are the tests that they're applying to people. So if you're a job seeker, you got to learn how to pass these stupid tests. It's ridiculous, I give to you, but it's a reality. And you're absolutely right, Amazed. I mean, you would think that if you're getting a job like a professional level job, you should talk to people for more than 45 minutes, right? To make a determination. You can barely do anything in 45 minutes. You could establish the person probably isn't an axe murderer, and knows a little bit about the job itself and has some basic communication skills, or they don't. You can establish that in about 45 minutes, but really seeing inside of them, forget it. You're welcome, Mary. Thanks for your intelligent question. Julia says, how to get a job in a society that operate based on connection. I hardly get the chance to even get an interview. I went to many job fairs, sent through job app, 0 results. Okay, well, so there's a bit of a thing I want to respond to. Number 1. Okay. I'm taking it. I infer from what you wrote, Julia, that you are an introvert, because I would expect an introvert to say something like that. Nothing wrong with what you said. I'm an introvert too, so I get it. But you see, this is my opinion, okay? You are stubbornly laboring under a fallacy. And that is that, I shouldn't have to know anyone to be given the same chance as anyone else. Right? Now imagine you are doing something that you need some help with. Like the example I've always used in the past is you're moving to a new home. Okay, so you got a new apartment or you got a new house or wherever you live, you're moving to a new home, you're relocating, and you can't move all your stuff by yourself. Usually you get movers to help you, or you could get a few of your friends. But in either case, you need help. You can't carry all your stuff yourself. Okay? So you need the services of somebody else to help you move all your heavy furniture. Okay. Now, who would you get? You can do what you want. You can get a family member, you can get a friend, or you could get a stranger. You could hire someone who's a professional mover, so they're like somewhat of a known quantity. They've put themselves out there in the public's eye saying, I'm a professional mover. Maybe they've worked for other customers before, but you don't know them personally. Or you could hire just somebody off the street. You could just put up a thing that says, help wanted, need someone who can move furniture, apply within, and they come and talk to you, right? Or they leave a resume, right? Now, let me ask you something. Who would you hire if you could hire a family member, a friend, a professional mover that you don't know, or a stranger who's not even a professional mover? Who would you get? Right? Well, you don't want your stuff stolen. You don't want your stuff ruined by giving it to someone who is like totally careless and has like, contempt for, like, maybe they're upset because they don't have any furniture themselves, so they kind of hate everybody who owns furniture or something. Like you don't know what you're getting if you were to get a stranger. So who would you choose? I'm willing to guess that you'd probably go for a friend or family member first, right? Because if nothing else, you trust them. If it's a friend, you get along with them. You know that they don't behave in a completely reckless, irresponsible way, hopefully, right? Depending on some of the friends you have, that's not always guaranteed. You know what I mean? Right? When they show up and they say, yes, I would like to help you move. I'm a good mover. I can lift furniture. I don't mind doing it. And I will be careful. When your friend says that to you, you will probably believe them, as opposed to a stranger saying that to you, where, you might be a bit skeptical. You don't know if this person is being honest or they could be lying to you. You don't know. It's not that you're necessarily suspicious, of people. It's just that you really don't know, right? There's been some pretty weird stuff that has happened out there, right? So that's kind of what you're up against, right? Who makes the decision for who to hire? It's bosses, right? Like usually the boss is the one that has final say over which person they're going to hire to work for that boss, right? If the boss says, absolutely not, I do not want that person working for me, usually that carries a lot of weight, right? Recruiters can recommend people, upper managers can make suggestions, but ultimately it comes down to the boss, the person that employee is going to report to. They make the final call, right? Just like you, who own the furniture, you get to decide who's the person you're going to be employing to move it, right? So you can see why knowing somebody matters in this situation. Now, I've just said this as an illustrative example, okay? In some situations, you might argue it shouldn't work that way. And maybe you're right. But in a lot of situations, it does work that way for reasons similar to the one I just mentioned in this example. Okay? The person with the higher likelihood of working out and not turning into some big negative thing is probably going to be hiring someone who's a known quantity, right? Okay? It's not that that person would be any better than you, for example. It's just that they are known, right? They are less of a risk. Because you're unknown, you have a higher likelihood from their perspective of working out. It's all those darn criminals and liars and people that have ruined it for like regular Joes, right? By making employers suspicious. Because employers have been burned. They've hired the wrong person. They've given people chances, and it turns out that this person is like a kleptomaniac or a murderer or a criminal, or they're a psychopath, or you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of like horror stories, right? Maybe they've got like major anger issues. Didn't show up in the interview, but it turns out once they're on the job, that's what you discover, right? So this is the thinking behind that, okay? When it's important, you really want to select the right person, and you would much rather go with someone you know, because at least you know what you're getting rather than a complete unknown. Okay, does that make sense? That's the principle behind it. It's very unfortunate that that stands in your way. However, there is good news, and the good news is that you can eliminate that disadvantage by doing a few things that I always talk about on these live streams, which is like things like informational interviews, things like reaching out to organizations proactively before they post a job, because that signals a lot of positive things that counteract the negative things that we've just been mentioning. Julia says, the thing is, I don't want to get entangled with the wrong circle. Well, the other thing I was wondering about what you said there was like, you said, I don't have connections, but yet you're going to job fairs. Things like job fairs, it's like technically that's kind of connections. If you go up to a booth for a company at a job fair, they've got a representative that's manning a booth, and that person's job is to make their company look like a great place to work, right? They're looking for students or whatever to get their first job with that company, and they're trying to persuade you to want to work for them and consider them and apply to them, right? So you go up to that person and, you give them a resume or you give them a business card and you say, hey, like, tell me about your company. And then they tell you some stuff and you say, wow, that's amazing. And you talk about how like that ties in with what you're looking for and what skills you have and what you can bring to it. And then you could say, like, you have a card, you give them a card. Maybe if you have one, they give you a card, and then you have their card. You could go and call them and say like, hey, remember a week ago when I met you at this particular job fair and you told me this? I don't know if you recall, we were talking about this. Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about what you said. And, are you guys hiring for those positions right now, or do they hire it, later on, whatever, right? And, you sort of go from there, right? I mean, that's all networking. That's all connections, right? So job fairs are kind of like, they're one way of developing connections. Extroverts would tend to like that stuff more, where you're meeting people face to face and you're kind of schmoozing a bit. I'm not that type of person. I don't recommend that for across the board, but some people are really into that kind of stuff. But yeah, technically, like if you're going to job fairs, that's how you can make connections and things. Like, for example, you could say to that person, like, listen, I'd very much like to sit down with, the head of this department at your company, for maybe half an hour and pick their brain about where this industry is going and, their thoughts on, what skills are going to be needed in the future and like all this kind of stuff. Would you be able to help set that up? Would that be possible? Or you could give me their contact information and I could call them. Or I could contact them, say, hey, I'm a student or a former student. I was at the job fair. I was speaking to your company's representative. I was wondering if I would be able to speak to you and just be able to ask you some questions about the industry in general. Can we set that up? Is that possible? And it goes from there, right? That's one way of doing it. Not for everyone. That's more of an extroverted way of doing it, but you could do it that way. Mary Wells says, why do so many companies hire from the outside instead of promoting from within? Okay, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, okay, think of it. You have a vacancy right here. Okay, this is like the organizational chart. Okay, usually goes like this, right? You got a vacancy right here. Okay, now if you have an employee right here, you can move them up into that role. Or if you have an employee over here, you can move them sideways into that role. Great, you fill that vacancy. The problem is you've now created another vacancy here or here, right? So one step forward, one step back, right? That's one reason why they don't do that. And if you did that, if you filled the vacancy here with someone from here, once again, you're just moving that vacancy down. So you're like moving all these people around. You're no further ahead in the sense of like filling positions. And now everybody is on a learning curve to learn a new job, and they're less productive than what they were in their old jobs, right? So that is another reason why they don't do that. Thirdly, In theory, if you want status quo, you hire from within. If you want change, you hire from without, like from outside. Okay, that's more for management type positions, but that's the general rule. You might say, look, we're doing really well right now. We've been very stable. We've been very profitable. We don't want to rock the boat. We've got this high level position to fill. We don't want to get the wrong person in there. What better way than moving someone internally into that role, right? But if things are not great, if you feel we should be doing better, we need a bit of change to bring in new ideas and stimulate growth, then you intentionally want to hire an external candidate, someone who's worked for your competitors, somebody who's worked for other successful companies. They're going to bring some of that knowledge and thinking and some of the solutions they've seen into your company. And that's how you grow and you are more innovative. You know what I mean? That's the thinking. So there's all these different reasons happening. That's why it pushes companies to hire from outside rather than looking inside first. They don't want to disrupt everything on the inside just to fill a position. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's some of the thinking on it. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. Marywell says, especially in retail, and then you have to train them. Yeah, exactly. The learning curve is a big deal, right? You're bringing people in from the outside. Yeah, and if the HR, like recruitment and selection process worked, especially in this day and age, you would have people that have more turnkey type skills. Like they get in there and they know what they're doing, right? Like that's the whole point of recruiters asking everybody, how many years of experience do you have? Because they assume that if you have more years of experience, then you can do the job better. Not always true, but like that's the whole reasoning behind that. They're more conservative now. They don't want to hire people and train them. They want to hire people that are already trained. That's becoming more important as people stay for a less and less amount of time in your company. If people are only staying there 2 years, by the time you get over the learning curve, you're only going to be there for like another 6 months before you leave, right? So it becomes more important that you hire people that can work right out of the gate. People. Mary's talking to Julia. I thought people were upset for a second there. Thank you for the advice. Yep. Kyle F says, what are the trends for sharing interview questions ahead of time? What does that mean? My organization is pushing us to share questions ahead of the interview. My team and I feel like it defeats the point of the interview. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I agree with you. I don't know what there's trends on that. There's stupidity around that. Does that count? Yeah, it's because once again, people don't know what they're doing, and they're bad at what they do, and they, you know what I mean? They're afraid of you putting them on the spot, right? That's usually why people ask you to submit questions in advance, right? I mean, look what I'm doing now. I mean, not to glorify myself, but I mean, I'm going live so that anyone in the world can ask me anything. I mean, you could even ask me some insulting kind of things if you really wanted to, and you got to be prepared for it. I mean, if they can't even do what I'm doing for this, where I'm not even really putting any major effort into it, and certainly no preparation, you know what I mean? Like that kind of shows you some of the caliber of people you're dealing with here. No offense to them, but that's what it signals. Like, what have they got to hide also? If you're so afraid of being put on the spot with a question, right? Oh no, you might ask me something that I can't speak freely about, or I can't reveal the actual answer to you, and but at the same time, I don't want you to know that. That could put me in an awkward position. Yeah, it's things like this. So I don't know what the trends are for that, but that's just the sign of not a great way of handling it. Julia says it's been like decades of attempt. Okay. Attempt at what? Like being able to find the right people? The other kind of thing is that for most jobs, you have an overabundance of qualified people. And what I mean by that is that these jobs are not really rocket science. They're not beyond most candidates. So it really isn't that much of a challenge to fill the job. When you got hundreds of people applying, and certainly 20% of them are fully qualified, they could do the job. Like any one of them would be fine. You know what I mean? And you can easily detect those 20% because if it's a customer service job, you look at somebody's resume. Have they ever done customer service before? No. Have they ever done anything that requires talking to the public? No. You know what I mean? Do they have any training whatsoever in customer service or anything similar to it? No, right? So it's like, well, it's pretty easy to eliminate that person. You don't need a PhD to be able to see that person probably would not be your first choice, right? But 20% of your applicants, certainly, for most jobs, will, they'll have customer service experience. They'll have like some kind of training in how to do customer service. Maybe they've worked in ancillary areas. Maybe they've done warranty stuff where you're dealing with warranty claims and stuff similar to customer service, right? Maybe you've worked in sales, similar to customer service. Okay, similar skills required. That person would probably be able to do the job, right? If you talk to them and they seem to have some charisma and they're easy to deal with and they seem to understand professionalism and protocol and things like this, they'd probably be able to do the job. If you said, I stake my professional reputation on my opinion that this person is the one you want to go with, you'll probably not regret it, right? It's not that much of a challenge. But no, you've got to be seen these days as, oh no, we've got this superhuman ability to see inside people. We use psychometrics. We employ people that have master's degrees in psychology to do job interviews because supposedly they can reveal some kind of insight into how this person is going to perform on their job that nobody else can see, right? Now, I have not seen any data that supports that. I have actually seen data to the contrary that does not support these kinds of initiatives. That's all I can say conclusively. And in my experience, it seems like it doesn't work, just personally. I've taught HR. I don't have a PhD in HR. I haven't done any of these studies, but, I've looked for some data-driven backup to some of these principles that they maintain, and I haven't found it. That might not mean anything, but I'm just saying I haven't found it if it's there. I've seen stuff that shows it doesn't hold any water. Studies they've done. There was a study that they did where it was in New York where they had two groups, and one group was they did several hires, and this was some kind of social experiment. I don't remember the details, but they did several hires where, in order to select the candidates that they selected, they employed they contracted the services of some of the highest big dollar HR recruitment companies in New York to consult on which candidate to choose, right? That was in one group. And in another group, they essentially hired people at random. They said, okay, we're here's the resume pile. We're just going to pick at random. We're going to pick the same people. So you had these two groups of employees. Some were handpicked and some were at random. And they analyzed their performance in the first 3 months of a job or something. And the spread, the handpicked people did perform better, but the spread was something 2 or 3% better performance. So the people picked at random were performing 97% the productivity of the people that were handpicked by the best experts in the business, pretty much. It was a margin that narrow, So yeah, but in order to play this game, you have to dance to their tune. That's the problem. So you have to learn this, as aggravating as it is. Of course, the alternative, there's a big alternative. It's the elephant in the room, but nobody ever wants to hear about it. It's networking. You know, if you're an introvert, if you know nobody, you can do this and win, but nobody ever wants to hear about it. You can reach out to companies yourself. You can do informational interviews yourself. And then you win because you're not talking about how good you are. You're demonstrating to them how good you are. You're talking right to the boss. You're showing how likable you are. You're showing how you know your stuff. You're having a conversation about the industry, about how you do that kind of work, and they can see you know your stuff. Just having an informal conversation about it, you know? And you signaled your enthusiasm and your dedication by being the only one that showed up and reached out to them. Nobody else did, only you. Who would you hire? Would you hire that person that you've met, that you got along with and showed up? Or would you hire a total stranger that responded to a job ad with a resume? You've never met them, but you suspect the only reason they applied is because you're offering money, not because they have any kind of interest in the company or doing that job. You don't know. You don't know the answers to these. Who would you choose? That's how you equalize it. I ended up talking about this stuff so much, I'm going to spare you guys today. Okay, where did I leave off here? Thanks for getting in the chat, by the way. There's 29 people here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for participating. I'm going to try and keep up with your comments here. Okay, I think it was Kyle F that I left on here. Kyle F, because it's harder to know who did the research and prep ahead of time. Yeah. I work in the public sector. Yeah, well, okay, the public sector, like government is its own thing. It's a little bit of a microcosm, and it's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad, it's its own thing. They have their own very peculiar beliefs about how hiring should be done, you know, and everything is done a certain way, and that's fine. But it's a special case, and you have to conform to the way they do it to get on in that system. I'm not a government employee. I'm very much a private sector person. You know, and I've never been on the inside of government really, so I'm not sure, but I understand some of the things they do, and I'm glad I'm not in on. Art Sim says, what's better, intense and knowledgeable or friendly and nice? Well, they're both equally bad, because intense and knowledgeable usually means that, you know, you suck as a person, you know? I know I'm being harsh here, but it's true. The real experts, the technical experts, there's a reason why you don't put those people in front of customers very often, because they're off-putting, they're too blunt, and the fact that they don't understand the importance of protocol and social skills, that's their own Achilles heel. Friendly and nice, the problem with them is that they suck as workers. They have a low work ethic, they don't have any attention to detail, right? You know, so I mean, they're both equally bad. What you want is you want both. You want someone who's competent, who's knowledgeable, who's got attention to detail, they're reliable, but yet they understand professionalism, they understand protocol, they understand the need to be insanely polite and pleasant to everybody, because if you're not, you're turning people off around you all the time. People go away dealing with you thinking, I don't want to deal with that person ever again. And if you have that effect on people, I don't care if you're Albert Einstein. Nobody wants to work with you. You know, this is not like the Manhattan Project. This is not like the Apollo program. This is, you know what I mean? In those wild exceptions, you could maybe put up with like extremely irascible people that violate all kinds of social rules and things like this because they're brilliant and you need brilliance. But in 99.99% of every other job, it doesn't work like that. I don't care how brilliant you are. If I go home at the end of the day wanting to jump off a bridge because I got to deal with you every day, no dice, right? So that's kind of the thing. You can't choose. You need both, or there are major problems with you that are going to harm you in your career. I'm being a bit rough on you, Art Sim. You asked you said a very intelligent thing. I'm just trying to demonstrate by giving more of an extreme example. Art says, I work in the public sector and we give all interviewees questions before the interview, sometimes days ahead. Yeah, so what you're doing is you're making everyone feel comfortable, I'm sure. There are no surprises. Nobody gets taken aback or surprised by anything. Great. But the insight that their answers are going to reveal will go right down because they can craft and prepare an answer that could be completely false, and it would be harder for you to detect that. So, I mean, you see, like, this is the thing. It depends what your priorities are. If your priorities are to make everyone feel comfortable, then you're doing a great job. If your priority is to really get some insight into who this person actually is and what are the limits of their capabilities, it performs less well. Julia says, you have no idea. I have always been friendly and nice. It is my hubby who is always frowning and angry, who gets jobs with great pay. But is that purely based on their personality? Are they getting jobs because of their personality? Or is your husband getting jobs because of some skills he might have or some other thing that he might have? Access to people, access to equipment, access to something, right? I strongly suspect that it's not purely because of personality. Now, listen, years ago, I saw a company who I did not like this company. They were in the construction business, and they didn't give a rat's ass about their customers and how happy their customers were. They got their customers to sign on the dotted line, commit to paying them, and then they didn't care about anything else. So as a result, you got a lot of angry, belligerent customers constantly calling the company, constantly showing up at the company. They were hiring for an office manager that had to answer the phones, taking calls from the public, and also had to man the reception area or whatever for their company. Requirements for the job. Do you think they want someone nice? Someone that's going to be very, very polite? They wanted someone mean. They wanted someone that, would take everything in their stride. You know what I'm saying? So it goes to show you that, like, not everyone is always looking for, friendly and nice all the time. If you're the type of person that works in an organization, say you're a knowledge worker, you have an office, you have a computer and a phone, but you're friendly and nice. Now, I'm just saying this to prove a point. You're the type of person that people can come to with questions, and you'll always give them the time of day. Even though if you're busy, you'll always give people 5 minutes. You'll listen. If they ask you questions, you'll take time to answer. If they ask for a small favor, you'll take time to do it, right? You're nice. You're friendly. Has that ever been taken advantage of? Your big reward is that everybody goes to you for a favor. Everybody goes to you with a question, and it interferes with your work. Have you ever seen somebody intentionally be a jackass to people around them so no one will come to them with their problems or their questions, and they'll have more time to do their work and do a better job and look better to their boss? Have you seen that? Right? It's not so simple, is it? Right? People who are mean tend to place value on other people who are mean. They say, that's a person who's really got it figured out. I like their attitude. They got the right idea. They'll go far in this business. There's a lot to this stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's always better to be nice, to be approachable, to be friendly. If you want to be an executive, usually you kind of need that. Not always, but usually, especially if you're facing the public, right? But it's not quite as simple as just doing that to everybody all the time. There's other kind of factors here. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that it's complicated. You got to manage how you do it. It's Doomstone has sent a super sticker or a super chat. Thank you very much, Doomstone. You are awesome. Doomstone says, what should I do if I don't hear back from a job? Here's what you should do. Move on. Okay? If they're interested, they'll call you. Okay? If they're not interested, they won't call you. If they're too stupid to see your value, they won't call you. If they're too disorganized to do their job properly and too incompetent, they won't call you. If there's something weird going on behind the scenes and they're hiring their brother or something instead, they won't call you. You don't know. So what you do is you keep moving forward. You keep putting your mental energy and your physical energy into discovering new opportunities and pursuing them. That's what you do. As much as humanly possible, you don't stop to look back and wait by the phone and worry and try to imagine what must be going on the other end of this company that you're not hearing from. Because that will make you insane. It'll make you depressed. It'll challenge your mental health if this has been going on for a while. Keep moving forward. That'll make you feel more optimistic. You're moving on. There's plenty of fish in the sea, and you're fishing where the fish are. Okay? You're not hand-wringing over something that's already done. You're going out from now, and you're creating the best possible chance for yourself. That's what you do. Okay? You will never know what's going on with a lot of these companies. It could be the reasons I stated a moment ago, or it could be others. You will never know. And even if they do get back to you and tell you what the reason is why they didn't call you or they rejected you, usually that's a lie. They won't be honest with you. So what's the point? You know? It's just an unfortunate reality of job search. This is the sales process, by the way. For people who work in sales, they recognize this exact thing as the sales process. You're selling yourself, right? You're pursuing leads. And for every lead you pursue, there is a probability that they will respond to you, right? It's based on nothing but statistical probability. It's not based on your performance that much, not as much as you might think. You apply one place, they don't even return your call. You apply to another place, not only do they interview you 3 times, but they hire you because they believe in you. What did you do different? Nothing. It's them, right? So you keep moving until you just happen to stumble upon an employer that happens to think what you have is awesome, right? That's what this is. It's the sales process. Does that make sense? Okay, I've been really falling behind on this live stream, but thank you for the super chat. It's Doomstone. You are awesome. I wish you a very prosperous 2025. Kyle F says, Kyle F is talking to Art. Julia says, it's decades of job hunting attempt. Okay. Amaze says, this may sound trivial, however, do you think interviewers exchange thank you notes, sending thank you notes, especially to multiple interviewers, can be tiresome? You know what's tiresome? This entire process. I would describe it as tiresome, wouldn't you? This whole thing, like talking to, like if you want to get an engineering job or an accounting job, talking to a recruiter who doesn't know engineering or accounting, and they're asking you questions like, tell me about yourself, you know, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? You know, and all this dog and pony show that you have to do. I would regard all of this as tiresome. Not getting responses from people, getting ghosted, dealing with unprofessional, rude recruiters. The whole thing is tiresome. If you are finding it tiresome, you are not alone, and you're normal. You're a well-adjusted human being if you find this tiresome. Now, on the subject of thank you notes, I just did a video about that, didn't I? I did a live stream or something like in the last week about thank you notes, where I went into, all this detail about thank you notes. So check that out. Bottom line is that, yes, you should send them. They do help, but you are absolutely correct. It can be prohibitively labor intense to try and do it for every job. So certainly for the good jobs, the ones that you're really excited about, the ones that are the most promising, the ones that are the most perfect for you, it is worth the 2 minutes or maybe 5 minutes to send a very short thank you note to the person. Okay? I wouldn't necessarily say you have to send them to every job you apply to, but certainly to the interviews you go to, definitely. Okay, so I'm rereading your question. It's like, okay, so you go to a job interview and I'm recommending you send a thank you note. Now, what do you do if it was a interview with multiple people? There's a temptation to send one note to like those 3 different people, right? Like you just copy the 3 people in the same note. I would not recommend that. If you're going to do it right. Give yourself the best possible chance and send 3 thank you notes to the 3 people if there were 3 interviewers. And you only have to do this if you were really wanting that job. But they do help. So it is worth doing. Check out my live stream on how to write a proper thank you note, what has to be in there, what tends to work. And there's other resources online too about that stuff. Art Sim is talking to Kyle. Kyle says, thank you for your perspective. Oh, thank you for your perspective, Art. Okay, so people are talking to each other. I guess I'm taking such a long time to get to your post that I don't blame you. I apologize. People are going back and forth. It's Doomstone again with a super chat. It says, yes, it did make sense. Question. As a high school student, how can I make my resume stand out? I have no professional experience. I feel like I'm stuck. Okay. Excellent question. Here's the deal. You like it when my bald head is like, right in front of the camera like that, like stretched out like the 39th parallel? Okay. Here we go. It's Doomstone. You're coming out of school and you don't have any professional experience. So I don't know what you're qualified in, or I don't know what job you want in what area, but you don't have any specific job experience in that area. And it seems like you have no experience, right? Okay, here's the deal. You actually have so much more experience than you think. Okay? Now, what do bosses want from their workers? So if they're hiring a worker, what do they expect the worker to do? Well, they expect them to have several things. First of all, they expect them to have a good work ethic. So if I give you a job to do, you have the discipline to go and get that done. You're not going to be lazing around. You're going to be getting down to work, right? I expect you to be trainable to a degree. So you can follow instructions. I can teach you how to do something. You will pay attention. You will remember what to do, and then you'll be able to do it correctly, right? You're teachable. I expect you to be punctual. I expect you to show up for work on time. I expect you to take your breaks when you're supposed to and not before or not outside of that. I expect you to stay till quitting time, not go home early. I expect you to communicate well with other people and be able to collaborate with other people if necessary. You're not like antisocial. You have social skills. You can talk politely and professionally to other people, right? You can coordinate group work. You don't have to get me involved to micromanage everything when you're just trying to partner with someone to do a job, right? You can work it out yourselves, right? Okay? Like you could make a laundry list of like little things like this. If you don't understand something, you have the initiative to come and talk to me about it. Say like, look, I don't understand this. I'm sorry, but would you be able to re-explain to me how you would like this done so that I can do it? Because I'm having problems understanding exactly what you're wanting me to do, right? You have the ability to do that. You have the initiative to do that. You have the communication skills to do that. And you listen. You can follow instructions, right? So you could write like a whole laundry list of all these different things, these traits, these abilities that you would need on the job to hold down a job and be considered a good employee. Okay? Well, here's the thing. You have all of those because you've been to school. Even in high school, you've had to demonstrate all these over and over again in order to pass high school, to pass a test or pass exams or do all the work for a course. You'd have need to do these. You've experienced working in groups. You've experienced following instructions. You're highly trainable. You're punctual. You have a good work ethic. You can ask for help when you need help and then receive that help and overcome the challenge, right? You have this whole laundry list of stuff. So you could tell stories about how you've demonstrated each and every one of those by saying like, okay, someone says to you, okay, tell me about a time where you demonstrated, initiative to overcome a challenge, on the job. And you could say, well, okay, here's an example where I've done that. Okay, this was in high school. And I was taking mathematics in high school. And I was not doing very well. I was failing the course, after the first test or something. I did not have a good experience on that test. And I went to the instructor and I said, look, I'm going to need some help. And I'm wondering if you can give me some additional problems to get through this. I worked with the instructor one-on-one. They gave me some additional help. I rose to the challenge. I did the work. Pretty soon I was passing the course. Pretty soon I was excelling in the course. And I passed that course with flying colors because of these additional efforts that I initiated to overcome my challenges with that material in the beginning. Something like that. Like you could I'm making this up off the top of my head, but you could tell a story like that, right? They say, tell me about a time where you showed, you demonstrated that you have a sense of punctuality and dedication. Oh, well, this last year at school, my attendance record is perfect. I had of 200 days or whatever it is at school in the school year, I was late only once and I was not absent at all. I show up on time. This is way above average for those students, and that's what I did. So that shows my ability to be punctual and my ability to be dedicated to a commitment I've made. Something like that. You could tell all kinds of stories to back up any kind of trait that's going to be needed on the job just by using high school, okay? Any group work you've done, any projects you passed or you were commended and given a really high grade, tell that story. What did you do to do it? What qualities does that demonstrate? You could be talking for 2 hours in a job interview, just telling a lot of these stories if you prepared them in advance, And at the end of it, they will not be able to poke holes in your skills and abilities because you've demonstrated every single thing that they're looking for a job. Okay? So I've done videos on this. Learn about how to answer behavioral questions. They're called behavioral questions. They're very popular in job interviews. You have to prepare stories from your past as answers to these. They say, tell me about a time you did this. So the answer is going to be a story from your past that's particular to you, that demonstrates how you've done something before. So it shows that you know how to do that, and you can do that. Okay? So you have all the experience you need to draw from to kick ass in a job interview when they ask you about all the things that they're looking for. Tell me about a time you demonstrated creativity to solve a problem, right? Think of when you've done that in school. Tell that story. Okay? So look into that, okay? It's Doomstone, because you will be able to demonstrate all of these just by doing a little bit of thinking work ahead of a job interview and saying okay, I need a story about where I've done creativity. I need a story about where I've not got along with someone, but smoothed it over. I need a example of where there was interpersonal conflict, but I managed to smooth it over and succeed. All these different scenarios. You need to prepare them in advance, and you'll have all of those. So it won't be a hindrance that holds you back. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you for the super sticker. Again, your second super chat, I should say. Thank you for the second super chat. Amazed says, thank you so much for answering my question, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Amazed. I'm glad you found the result to your liking. Julia says, thank you for all the insightful answer, Bill. God bless for the upcoming you. Yes, I wish everyone a happy 2025. I wish everyone prosperity and happiness in the new year. If 2024 was kind of maybe a valley for you, if you're between jobs, whatever, I hope 2025 just knocks it out of the park. That's what life's like. You got peaks and valleys. Sometimes things go up, sometimes things go down. We really don't seem to have that much control over it. We just do the best we can. And we take care of our mental health in the process. That's the other aspect to this. So I see there's 25 people here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. If anybody has any questions, please ask them now. We've reached the end of the chat. So I've responded to everything that you guys have said so far. So if anyone has any more questions, now is your moment of glory to ask them. Otherwise, I'll be winding this down in about 30 seconds if I don't get anything. In the meantime, while we're waiting a few seconds, I will just say, check out some of the courses I have. If you want to go deeper, like for example, it's Doomstone asking that question about how can I do a good job interview if I don't have professional experience. Questions like that, that's what I have in my courses. So if you're looking to get hired, that's my definitive sort of thing on how to get hired. All my advice is there in a logical order with templates, with processes, and it talks about how to get hired for posted jobs that you might see out on the internet, but also how to put yourself forward for hidden jobs and get those, because that's where the majority of jobs are. They're actually in the hidden job market. They're not posted. Every job that you see online, you're seeing about 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there. There's a lot more, but those jobs, they're not posted because they don't need to be posted, because as soon as the boss tells anyone that this position is available, they're already getting suggestions from everyone saying, hey, I've got a brother or a friend or a coworker, a previous coworker that would be perfect for this. So they don't need to post those jobs. So those jobs tend to be very desirable and they get filled very quickly. And so it leaves a lot of people thinking like, well, how do I even put myself forward for those? Well, there is a way. It's called networking, and you can do it even if you're a technical introvert. I'm a technical introvert. A lot of it can be done virtually using social media, social networking. But some of it is face-to-face stuff where they invite you down. They say, we want to talk to you. Just a one-on-one kind of thing. Let's come on down. Let's have a conversation. And it feels like a referral. It doesn't feel like a job interview. It feels very, very positive, very welcoming. And it's a pleasure to do a lot of times because they invite you in. They say, come down, And if there's a job at the end of it, it tends to be very easy to get those jobs because they're already warmed up to you. They already like you. So anyway, that's all in that course. Check it out. Link in the description. If you want to learn business, I have that course too, the $100 MBA, incredible bang for the buck. Allows you to learn everything you would in an MBA program, like in a business program, for $100. The catch is that it's self-study. I provide videos, but you're reading books and things and the textbooks, the same textbooks they use in their MBA program in places like Harvard Business School. You're getting the same material. You can skim it if that's what you're wanting to do, get a cursory understanding, or you could go really, really in depth. Depends what your goals are. But you get that for $100. So check that course out. And if you want to climb the ladder, you want to put yourself forward for higher level jobs like management jobs and executive jobs. The big thing that you need to tack on for executive jobs is, high level communication skills. And that's what that course goes into. So check that out if you have ambitions to get promoted at work, go into management, or if you're in management to get into, excuse me, to get into upper management, check out that course. Link in the description. Kyle F says, thank you for doing these. I've been a longtime viewer. Introduce all our interns to your channel to help them prepare for getting their first FTE job. You've helped me and them a lot. Well, thank you very much, Kyle. That's very nice of you to say so. And that's a really great compliment. Thank you for doing that. Hopefully that these people learn something and it served them well, hopefully. So that's great to hear. Thank you. So 28 people. Thank you very much. I'm going to be winding this down. You guys are awesome. I will be back on Wednesday. Wednesday, I believe, is New Year's Day. I've decided to kind of all through the holiday period to do my live streams like I would normally do them. My family's off doing family stuff, and I'm here doing a couple of live streams. It's not a big deal. But I will be back, I guess, on New Year's Day for my regular Wednesday stuff. So join me then. Thank you. I wish you nothing but the best. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. See ya.